talk to you directly. So John, of course, is Victoria's first Chief Information Security Officer and leads the government cybersecurity strategy. He's got over 20 years experience in information technology with a focus on cybersecurity and financial services and the public sector. He was previously the Senior Manager Information and Technology Risk at ANZ. So we've already said that John's going to give us a brief overview of the current emerging cyber threat landscape, and hopefully that'll answer a few of your questions. And then he'll want to talk to you about a project with the VMIA to establish a Victorian Government Cyber Maturity Benchmark and how this will be of assistance to you as ARMC members, and then a snapshot of the next cyber strategy. So with that long introduction, I'll now hand over to John O'Driscoll. Thanks, John.
Thanks very much, Andrew, and thanks for the opportunity to come and talk to you today. So I've put together a pack where I'll give you an overview of the current cyber threat landscape, and I will also look at what our response to that has been from the Victorian government perspective over the last sort of 12 to 18 months. I'd also like to focus on a piece of work that Dave alluded to earlier on, which is a Victorian government cyber maturity benchmark using the ASD Essential 8. And then a little bit of a heads up for Victoria's next cyber strategy, which was endorsed by Cabinet in April, and we're looking forward to our Minister for Government Services issuing that formally to the public in the coming weeks. So what's the current threat landscape? Again, Dave mentioned about ransomware, and so at a global level, we can see that there's an increase in the likelihood and impact of cyber attacks. The numbers around the value of cybercrime are pretty impressive. 6 trillion US this year, up from 3 trillion in 2015. And we know that critical infrastructure is under constant attack, and ransomware seems to be the preferred attack vector at the moment. And depending on which research you look at, ransomware has increased by either 100 to 300% over the last 12 months. So it's not going away. Dave mentioned the fairly recent one, which was on the Colonial Pipeline service in the US, which impacted their East Coast oil supply and resulted in a temporary state of emergency declared by their president. Ransomware attacks, we're finding the top 3 areas that are impacted by them: healthcare, second, utilities, and third, insurance and legal. At a national level, what are we seeing? Cybercrime costs the Australian economy about 1.9% of our GDP, which is around 29 billion Australian dollars annually. And the intelligence we're getting from our colleagues in Canberra is that the level of threat we face from foreign espionage and interference activities is currently unprecedented. And you can see that the geopolitical tensions within our region are likely to promote that tension going forward. So I guess what I'm saying to you, it's not going to diminish anytime soon. Our Prime Minister went on public notice in the middle of last year and mentioned something called an APT campaign, Advanced Persistent Threat. That was a nation-state-based attack on critical infrastructure and government within Australia. He mentioned that in the middle of last year. That hasn't stopped. That's actually been ongoing. And a brief look at the bar chart to the right of that. These are incidents that are reported to the Australian Cyber Security Centre in Canberra. So they get an incident reported about every 8 minutes. And from that bar chart, I'll let you review it in your own time, but we can see Commonwealth Government and states and territories are the highest number of incidents reported to them, probably because we rely on the ACSC to help us. So I'd expect that there's underreporting in the system as we speak. And then what are we seeing in Victoria? So I stood up a cyber incident response service for the whole of Victorian government in the middle of 2018. Since then, we've seen over 1,600 incidents reported to my team, and over 250 Victorian government entities have been targeted in those incidents. Some of them are quite minor in nature. Others, like the Eastern Health and previously the SWA incident, were way more significant in relation to availability of critical services to the public. So as a data point, I can tell you that on average, there's an unauthorised access attempt to our government networks every 45 seconds. It's like somebody going up to your front door or to the windows of your home, checking to see whether they can get in. And then there's a successful compromise every 40 minutes. That may mean they get in but don't do anything, or they get disturbed. But that gives you an indication that we live in a hostile cyber threat environment, and it's not likely to get any better for quite some time, particularly when the financial rewards for the bad guys is extreme, as you've seen, and the likelihood of identifying the criminal and then prosecuting them is a lot less. So our threat actors range from annoying through to organised crime, highly sophisticated organised crime, through to nation state activity. And when it comes to organised crime, these days, some of the estimates are that for $4 million, you can get what would have been nation-based capability of 5 years ago. So it's getting more commercialised, and hence the drive when we see things like ransomware attacks. Cyber criminals target all areas of government. I'm lucky that I inherited Victoria's cybersecurity strategy that covered 2016 to 2020. Victoria was the first state to issue a cyber strategy, and that's helped improve visibility of the extent of the issue. And when I moved into this role, initially we had a team of 4. And so now the team is up to 24, which is indicative of the amount of work that we've got ahead of us. So what have we been doing about it? It's really important to understand that technology alone will not provide a solution to the problem. So people, process and technology is really important. You have to focus on those 3 elements, and probably the people side even more. Some of the processes we've got in place have probably been designed 20 years ago for a threat environment that's very different to what it is now. And Andrew mentioned before risk appetite. So I think our risk appetite for a cyber incident, I think it would be ridiculous if we said 0, but we should be more focused on the consequence of that incident. So our risk appetite for taking critical services off to the community for an extended period of time would be 0. So we're never going to be able to eliminate risk. It's all about risk management. But we need to be able to identify what's happening in our networks way quicker than we ever have in the past, and then to be able to respond and put mitigating controls in place. So we've been conscious about building cyber into overall risk management. So working really closely with Victorian Managed Insurance Authority, DTF, the owners of the risk management framework, OVIC, EMV, VAGO itself, and the State Significant Risk Interdepartmental Committee and Audit and Risk Committee chairs. We mentioned culture earlier on as well. It's really important that we encourage an environment or a culture of cyber risk where it's good to identify what's broken and what needs to be fixed. The last thing we want to do is send people underground because the implications of putting your hand up and saying something needs to be fixed are that you may not, you may lose your job. So we as risk management professionals have to be open, and it's way better to understand what your risk is and then do something about it. Really important going forward. And we've been running Cyber for Directors course that's sponsored by the Australian Institute of Company Directors. I think we've had probably about 150 board members through that. The next step is around cyber maturity and controls, and that's we've been focusing on the ASD Essential 8. I'll park that for the moment and talk to you about that more going forward on my next slide. Asset management, you can't manage what you can't see. Often the visibility of the critical assets that support our systems and services is poor. So if you don't know what you've got, it's really hard to protect it appropriately. Threat intelligence, it's really important that we're able to leverage good quality threat intelligence and turn it into actionable intelligence to help our departments and agencies doing more work on that. And I think guidance and advice, so coming from my team now, I expect over time, we provide advice, but I think over time that advice will end up being translated into almost like mandatory architecture patterns and guidelines that entities will be obliged to follow rather than opt in to follow. And yeah, I think David also spoke about capability. So I agree with him that minimal uplift in capability can achieve very significant improvements, but it's an emerging area and we need to make sure that we try and keep pace with that. So why the ASD Essential 8? Why are we doing it? It's to provide some type of visibility as the state of cyber maturity across government, and then consistency in measurement. So it was also an action item from the current cybersecurity strategy. Why Essential 8? Well, it's an industry recognised baseline set of security controls and strategies that ASD or the Australian Cybersecurity Centre tell us if you have that baseline level of controls, you will be able to prevent or at least significantly mitigate 85% of the current cyber incidents. So let's start with something that's achievable and then build on top of that. But remember my words, it's a baseline set of controls. There will be parts of government that will need a higher level because the risk appetite for cyber threats, for example, in health, will be a lot lower. How we're doing it? VMIA have been outstanding in their partnership with us, and our secretary has also written to secretaries across all the departments to encourage them to opt in to this benchmarking exercise. What will be done with the results? Individual entities that complete them will be able to see their own results, obviously, but it'll be across a cohort of about 250 organisations from different portfolios. So if 5 entities plus within a portfolio complete the exercise, then we say we've got a benchmark for that portfolio or for that sector. It can be used for whole of Victorian government risk management to not only uplift controls, but to prioritise expenditure. Guidance and support. If you want to know some more about that, there's a link to the VMIA site and there's some great collateral there, or reach out to myself or the Chief Information Security Officers or Information Security Managers within your own departments or agencies. But I really encourage you to look at that further. And then a quick look, the project has been phased from about September last year, and you can see some of the cohorts and the timing of those, and we're hoping to have 200 odd organisations that are part of this within a 12-month period concluding in September this year. And then I expect that results of those will be able to be shared with the applicable Audit and Risk Committee areas. So in my last few minutes, here's a bit of a heads up for Victoria's 2021 cyber strategy. 12 months worth of work, huge amount of work, lots of stakeholder engagement internally from about September through January this year. And then, as I said, we went to Cabinet for endorsement in April. That was after getting PSAC endorsement in February. So looking really hard now to push our Minister's Office to be able to go public with this. Basically, the vision will be a cyber safe Victoria. That's a real step up because the previous strategy was cyber resilient government services. So now we've got recognition that the Victorian government has a role to play in help protecting the community. 26% of all incidents that get reported to the ACSC are from Victorian citizens. So our community is being targeted. There will be 3 missions. The first one, safe and reliable delivery of government services, which is kind of what we've been working on. And so we'll have a mission delivery plan for that. That'll cover probably 12 to 18 months. Mission 2, a cyber safe place to work, live and learn. So this is helping the community and small to medium enterprises. And then the exciting mission 3 is a vibrant cyber economy. So this is looking at how we can potentially position Victoria as possibly a Silicon Valley for cyber going forward. How do we encourage the best and smartest operators to come into our local environment? How do we provide assistance for small startups that have innovative solutions to cyber problems to be able to grow their business in Victoria? And previously mentioned was procurement. We're doing some work with the Victorian Government Procurement Board on how we can make procurement of cyber services way better and probably fairer for a broader range of service providers. So coming through to how you can help. 3 things. You can have a passion to learn more about cyber, and it can be quite a complex area, but it doesn't have to remain that way. So reach out to myself or your cyber professionals in your departments and agencies. Ask intelligent questions. And there's no such thing as a stupid question. I have heard some really stupid responses, but don't feel intimidated by asking questions. And I'm probably going to pay the price for that shortly when we go to Q&A. And encourage participation of your portfolio entities to to be included, to participate in that Essential 8 project with VMIA. And then please, once the results start to come through, you will see a gap between current state and target state. You're better to understand what that gap is and to do something about it, rather than to have a risk management culture which drives people underground from not wanting to be able to talk the truth. And a quick round out. So there was a question earlier on about Home Office and has that impacted our threat landscape? Hell yeah, because our threat vector now, network, is way bigger. But we've implemented controls from a Centretex environment and from some of the other centrally managed IT areas. And we also spent a fair amount of time and effort in communicating to staff last year on things that they need to do, like handling of sensitive data. Don't store it on your home laptop. Don't leave confidential documents on your desk when you're at home. We provided some guidance on phishing threats, and I guess the other important thing to do is that don't ever think that cyber gets fixed and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. As we move more and more to digital delivery of services, both within government and to our community and customers, there will be a need to constantly relook and rethink about the threat environment and the controls that we have to help address those. So, Andrew, what I might do now is hand back to you, and if there's any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them.
Thanks, John. Before I get to the questions, I am very sensitive to the fact that we advertised that this forum would finish at 11:15. It's now 3 minutes past that. And I just wanted to remind everyone that this is being videoed, so any questions we've answered today you'll be able to retrieve on the video. And I think what we're going to do is be beaten by time, because I've now got another 10 or 20 questions that have just come in. So what I've asked the team to do is to basically capture every question that's been asked, and we'll put together a written response to those questions and share them with the participants today. So I've been really pleased with the amount of interaction we've been able to have, even though it's kind of one way. But look, I might just take 2 minutes maybe and get you to answer one question. And it's been observed a couple of times. Someone asked an earlier question about the threat to operational technology systems, SCADA systems. Someone's made an observation that in getting software from vendors, it quite often comes with very little security attached to it, and we're all acutely aware of things like factory settings and factory passwords. And then there's another observation: is it just the health sector that's the big target here? Why do they seem to be getting hit? I don't know if you've got any observations around which sectors do you think are a greater threat, if any, and what people should do in terms of getting comfort about the security settings and that they've got when they bring in new software or upgrade their software.
Yeah, they're all great questions, and I'll try and do justice to them in a fairly short amount of time. Why health? Because they support critical services that are essential to the community, and because they have really sensitive data. So the cyber criminals with the ransomware attacks now have a two-pronged attack. One is they will look to see what is inside that network, and then once they find it, and hopefully if they find your backups, they will encrypt them. But before they do that, they will look to exfiltrate sensitive data. So they hit you with two whammies: pay the ransomware, or will expose sensitive information that we've taken, and secondly, will encrypt your system so that you can no longer use them. So it's really important that you have some basic controls, particularly your backups, to make sure that they're secure and can't also be compromised. The other important thing is that it's not a case of if you're going to have a cyber incident, it's when, and you've probably had them already. So it's really important that you exercise so that in the heat of the moment, you've got some experience in how you would respond to attack. When it comes to SCADA systems and the IT profession, we haven't really taken secure by design seriously. And if you look at the number of patches that you have to apply to your home systems, for example, it's significant. It's almost like all the responsibilities put on the consumer to protect themselves. So I've been working with some colleagues at the Commonwealth level to see, is it possible that we could have some better standards for the products and services that gets delivered? And could we have something like a 5-star trust rating so that consumers could make an informed decision when it comes to their purchase? Just like if you want to purchase white goods, just like if you go to a supermarket and you're health conscious. So at the moment, that doesn't exist. But going forward, we have to stop admiring the problem and start to look at ways that we can really be innovative in addressing it. And SCADA systems, yes, particularly in our critical infrastructure like water. And so what I've done is now I've appointed a water sector CISO who's going to work with the 19 water authorities across Victoria to look at some consistency, also some standards, and to have some configuration guides where we can say, don't just accept out-of-the-box configurations. These are the ones that we need based on our risk appetite. So hopefully that helps, Andrew.
Thanks, John. And I can see there's a lot of love coming in for your presentation, I must say. People commenting, why wouldn't an entity opt into this? Is local government included in this? Hi, John. NIST and ASD are essential benchmarks. Should we be getting ahead of the assessments and work on our maturity levels now? Someone said they love Mission 3 and using local skills and IT expertise.